So you all got some materials when you came in. You got a brochure about Alexandra House, and so elder abuse, and so I may be referring to this a few times throughout the bingo presentation. You have a flyer that talks about our elder abuse services, and it talks about our support group. We do have one specifically for people who are over the age of 50, as sometimes dealing with issues is a little different than some of the just straight domestic violence issues. And then you also have something from NCEA, the National Council on or Center on Elder Abuse, which talks a little bit more about financial exploitation. And then you have a bingo board, the all-important 9 squared bingo board, along with a little survey that we'll ask you to fill out at the end. The bingo board has 9 squares, and so I will talk about each square. There are some pens in the little brochure holders on your table. And there's also a couple of pins. The pins have teal and purple on them. The purple symbolizes domestic violence awareness, and the teal symbolizes sexual violence awareness, which are both things that Alexandra House works with. So just kind of something if you want to take that along today. So I want to do a couple of introductions here. My name is Dawn Rutt, and I am the Elder Abuse Services Coordinator for Alexandra House. And that's kind of a change. I've been with Alexandra House for 17 years. But the first 15 I spent working with teens in the high schools. And when COVID hit, our elder abuse coordinator left to take care of her mother. And they said, Dawn, will you do some follow-up phone calls for us? Will you do some of our crisis line? And when COVID started to open things back up and the schools went, I said, I don't know if I really want to go back in the schools. I think I found a new calling. And so I have switched over to elder abuse, and we still have the services in the school. Some other people are doing those things. But I have fully embraced the elder abuse services piece, working with individual clients and doing this community outreach. So it is interesting how life can shift. Even when you're in your mid-50s, sometimes things take a different turn for you. So I appreciate being able to do this in Anoka County. And then I have the wonderful Joyce here. Joyce is a volunteer with Alexandra House, and she is amazing. I am fortunate to have her. She works with me on all of the presentations that we do and the outreach and the resource and tabling events. If any of you have interest in doing volunteer work, which I have a feeling many of you already do in multiple places, right? I have a feeling when you're involved, you're very involved. But there is an info brochure on the table on the way out if you have any interest. I think they're starting something in April. But thank you all for being here today. So we've gone through all of those things. Oh, rules for bingo. You can get it across the top. You can get it up and down. So horizontal, vertical. We'll play all different ways on that board. So I'm going to get started unless anybody has a specific question. Okay. So first I'm going to talk about Alexandra House services. We have a shelter in Blaine, which I think is what we're most well known for. That shelter can house 35 people. If we have male victims, which we often do, we have a local hotel that we work with. Mixing men and women in the middle of crisis is not always the best idea. And I will say, especially myself, working with some of my male clients, and especially when you're older, sometimes it is a little easier to be in a space that you're on your own. And I will say the clients that I work with in elder abuse, I would say about half, not quite half, but I probably have more clients than most of the rest of us do who are male, as elder abuse impacts them in many different ways. So we have the shelter. We also have an office here right in Anoka by the county courthouse with our legal advocates. We do a lot of things with restraining orders and orders for protection. If there's a domestic call at someone's home and someone's arrested, they're often go to this, I forget some of the names of the legal stuff because I'm not the legal person, but they will go and see what happened to them in court in the morning. Did they get released? Are they being held on bail? Did they get a quick order, kind of a short-term restraining order so that we can get this person to a safe house, that kind of thing. So our legal advocates do a lot with that. They are not attorneys, but we do have some great referral systems And actually CMLS, Central Minnesota Legal Services, has just recently joined us in that office. So that's another one of our offices. And then we actually just recently were able to purchase a building in Andover to hold all of our marketing team and our communications team and our grant writers and the people who, like me, who do outreach. And so actually the cost of that building was less than the rent we were paying for the other one. So we were fortunate that it just happened to work out right for us. So we have multiple locations, and then even those locations, like I said, in the schools. So we are in, over 20 some schools in Anoka County working with youth. So we have a very large presence as far as our services go. We also work in local hospitals. We have healthcare advocates, and I think Joyce does this as well. If someone is sexually assaulted or physically assaulted due to a domestic abuse case, and they're at the hospital will actually call Alexandra House, and one of our advocates will go out and support and advocate that victim survivor. Let them know about our services, let them know what's going on. So we are in more places than just that shelter in Blaine. Okay, so that's a bunch of our, and we have support groups, as I mentioned earlier. We have about 3 different ones going on. One specifically for sexual violence victims, one for elder abuse support, and then one that's a general domestic violence. All of them right now are on Zoom, but some may start being hybrid and doing a little bit of both. As far as me, with elder abuse, our grant covers people who are age 50 years of age and older. Now, we were kind of laughing that that's not really old, but it's a federal grant, so that's what it qualifies for. So sometimes I'm working with a client who's like 52, and they don't qualify for county programs or state programs or anything else because they're not 60 yet. So sometimes we can do more support because it's sometimes those people who fall through the cracks. They may be a victim who needs services, but they don't qualify for this one, or they don't, they're not old enough to get that one yet. So we are really working, and what I do is an extra support. So a client may end up in the shelter. Our shelter advocates work with them, give them safe housing, and then as they're ready to leave, or if they're a client who goes into the hotel, it's kind of lonely. So I may be the one who calls a couple times a week and chats. I may go over and visit. So it's kind of a little bit different, but I will kind of work with them after the initial crisis. Maybe our legal team has worked with them on a restraining order, and we got the abuser out of the house. But now, and maybe I'll share a story right now. So any story I share, I do want you to know that this person has allowed me to share what happened to them. I'm not using their names, though. We had a person who we got a restraining order on their abuser. And this was probably the 3rd or 4th restraining order, because it takes an average of 7 times for someone to leave. And they were finally ready, and the physical assault was pretty awful. But once we got her back home, it was who was going to do the lawn care, who was going to shovel the snow, who else has locks to the house that person knows, that abuser knows. So we had to change the locks on the home. We got her connected with services so that she could have lawn care. There were she had some disabilities, and so there was some extra needs, food shelf and food delivery, and getting those things set up. And she also had compromised eyesight, so she was not able to use a computer to do some of the ordering or all the things you're supposed to do online, right? So it was working with her on all of those other things that we don't often think about. Oh, the abuser got locked up, and this one actually got incarcerated for many years. But now, how does she survive? How does she stay in her home? How does she maintain her independence? How does she get connected with county programs and services? So that's a lot of what I do. So that's kind of the broader spectrum of what elder abuse can be as far as our services. We are on a grant. So we, every 2 years, have to reapply. And hopefully, it ends in September. Hopefully, we'll get another one again. But that's kind of how our services work there with this extra elder abuse piece that we have. And part of the grant actually pays for someone on the adult protection in Anoka County. So one of their staff people is paid by our grant as well in working with this. So lots of information right there on our services, but I hope that gives you a broader spectrum of what we do, and that we've got more than just that shelter building that I think sometimes people know us for. The second one, how many seniors do you think are impacted by violence, especially elder abuse? It is 1 in 10. So as you look around this room, there are potential people who have either dealt with it or are dealing with it. Think about when you actually go and play bingo, right? Who's sitting at the table with you? Maybe at your book club, maybe at a card place that you do or a meeting that you go to. We often don't think that it's happening to other people, but if you start to listen to conversations, my mother is 82, and in her card group, one of the women started to talk about how they were going to buy a recliner. They were that COVID check we got, right? They were so ready to buy that recliner. They'd kind of had some money saved, and her son, who was caretaking, swooped in and took that check for his car repair. And then in talking, she kept talking about how, she couldn't get groceries yet this week because she had to wait again because her son had spent the money on a TV and then had, things were disappearing. And when he bought groceries, he was buying extra things. And so his help turned into a hurt for her. Financially, especially, she was being exploited by him. And he was the one who was supposed to be, the family thought he was taking care of her and helping her during COVID when people couldn't visit, right? So my mom, because she knows what I do, started to ask her friend more questions so that we could get that friend more help in understanding what was going on.
Our microphone has never bit anybody.
Oh, do I need it closer? Okay, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. So it just is important to have those conversations because it does affect 1 in 10 seniors, but nobody wants to share. We often are afraid to tell people because they're going to put me in a nursing home. They're going to think that I can't control my money. They're going to think I have Alzheimer's or that I'm starting to be forgetful. So if I start to tell people that someone took advantage of me, then what are they going to think about me? There's shame, there's guilt, there's, I don't want anybody to know. So oftentimes people aren't sharing what's really going on or what's happening. Another piece is oftentimes, the abuse can happen by adult children or grandchildren. It can happen by your partner. It can happen from a roommate who you moved into your home. But we don't think that the people who care for us are going to be the ones who are going to hurt us. Oh, they didn't mean to do that. Or, oh, he really needed that money for his car. But he didn't ask, right? He just took. So it's different if you want to generously give and help someone out. But it's different when your family expects or suddenly takes things out of your account. So it looks very different. And this is kind of why I say, after COVID opened up, we used to have those, I don't know about you, but the conversations, I called them conversations at the mailbox. I'd go get my mail and I'd see somebody gardening and I'd stop and chat for a minute. And, and during COVID, we weren't going outside and we were creeping covered up and we weren't having those conversations. So now that things have opened up a bit, kind of checking on those neighbors who might not have come back outside. And I know it's cold, so it's winter. But maybe they didn't come back to book club or maybe they didn't come back to one of the church groups that you're part of. It's kind of checking in on those folks and seeing how they're doing because there was a lot of abuse that got hidden during COVID. And I also know it's not just abuse, but, medical issues didn't get taken care of and some of those things too. So it's just kind of that checking in with each other, checking in with our friends, checking in with our neighbors. The next word is types of abuse. Now we may get people who already shout bingo. So what we're going to tell you is we actually have bingo prizes for everybody. So at the end, we will be giving prizes out to everyone. And then there's numbers on your bingo boards. And so we'll give out some additional prizes with those, just so that we don't have to kind of stop as we go along. Yeah. I do this also with a 25 square bingo board. So I will tell you that, it can get a little chaotic, but it's a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of fun. So we're going to talk a little bit about types of abuse. And I think I talked a little bit about the financial, right? But I think that most of the times we think about that physical abuse. And I will tell you, I have had clients who are wheelchair bound and have been slammed into cupboards. I've had clients who have been pushed downstairs. Sometimes we have police, we work with police and fire departments, and they call us when there's a domestic, but sometimes they forget to call us when there's an elder abuse. Or they think, oh, that person just fell. And they're older, so rather than listening to the elder person, they listen to the abuser. Oh, they got dizzy and fell. Well, this is the fourth time you've come to this house, and you're not asking the older person what really happened to them. Or you haven't asked them alone without the abuser in front of them. So we work with police departments, we work with fire departments who come a lot when falls happen, to kind of work and make sure that we're talking to folks when things are happening. I will also say sometimes anybody, no matter what your age, you don't want to get a restraining order against a family member or a partner. You know, I get people who will tell me, if I was a better parent, my adult child wouldn't do this to me. It's my fault that they act this way. Maybe the adult child has drug or alcohol issues or mental health issues. And, you know, they wouldn't, I was an alcoholic and so it's my fault. This is what they saw. Or, you know, so the guilt and the shame is there and they don't want to get the order. So sometimes they don't get an order until they become physically assaulted, until something serious happens in that way. Because they put up with a lot of emotional abuse. Well, you're so stupid, you forgot, you don't know, you know, you're just old, right? And the threats. What are you going to do if I'm not here? If I'm not here to bring you to the doctors, who's going to take you? You know, I'm going to tell them that you're crazy. I'm going to tell them that you did this, right? We're going to put you in a home. And so that fear is there. What's going to happen? How am I going to deal with this? Some of my clients who it's their partner who's abusive, it's a little scary at 70 some years old to want to get a divorce. And I will tell you, one of the biggest concerns isn't always safety. It is medical insurance. And will I have medical insurance of my own? Will I be able to draw from their pension? I took care of my partner all these years. So we connect people with divorce attorneys who can give them information on what some of that could look like. And is a separation better than getting a divorce? Or, you know, how do you share or save your assets? So it's not always as easy as the abuser left and now we're fine. There's a lot more pieces that come into what that looks like. Oftentimes people don't see the verbal and emotional abuse as abuse because there's no physical marks that are left. And I will also say that I have clients who have been sexually abused by their partners, by their adult children, grandchildren, or people that were brought into their home from their adult children or grandchildren. I let my buddy sleep on the couch for 3 months, and in the end, we find out he had sexually assaulted the senior that was in that home. So it can cover the spectrum of abuse, absolutely. And I'm going to go a little bit more into that financial part, the financial exploitation. How many of you get the phone calls to renew your car warranty? How many of you have been called by the IRS that we're going to come and arrest you? You get the call sometimes where it's, and actually I've been getting letters. I actually had to call because I've been doing enough of these and work with the county attorney. When the census stuff came to my house, I called to ask if it was legit because I had gotten letters from the IRS that looked like they were from the IRS that were not. So I double check stuff now. And I will tell you, the police departments tell me that they have seniors coming in all the time, calling or bringing in stuff that they got in the mail to check and see if it's legit. Because once you log on to that site, you're kind of in it and you're done. The FedEx package that was supposed to arrive, this was a big one at Christmas, right? My niece, my nephew, my daughter said they sent a package. And then when I get this IRS message, or this, FedEx message, oh yeah, that was the package they were sending me. And now I've given them my credit card information, I've given them my address, they have my phone. Yep, oops. Yeah, I will tell you I got scammed by someone who told me they were the utility company. And I was driving, and I went, and I still send my bills snail mail. So I pulled over, and I got out my credit card, and I paid the bill. And then when I drove the rest of the way home, I went, what did I just do? So I called my utility company and they said, yeah, we don't do that. So I was able to quickly enough stop it with my credit union. But what they do is they get you in panic mode. Oh, I won the lottery. I only have to pay the taxes and then I get all this money. And so you're so excited, you go get your credit card out and pay the taxes. And you never see the lottery winnings or the sweepstakes winnings. I'm so excited, or, oh my gosh, someone's hurt and they need a repair and they need this, or, oh my gosh, my car warranty, I can't have that. Or I don't want to be arrested for my taxes, right? I don't want that on my credit. So they get you escalated. And then that's how they help you make bad choices. There's also the sweetheart scam, or the friend scam. If any of you play like bingo or solitaire or something on your phone or your iPad or your computer, right? Sometimes you're playing against an opponent and you can say, hey, great job. Nice game. Oh, that was a good one, right? And then pretty soon they're like, hi, I'm Susan. I'm in, New Mexico. Where are you in? And they start this little conversation. And during COVID, we had a lot of seniors having conversation with each other over those things. And then 6 months later, it's like, oh, Susan, I haven't played this game with you. You've been gone for a couple of weeks. Oh, I was sick. Or my mother died. I don't have the money to pay for the funeral. Well, I could help you with that. Because now I think Susan's my friend because I've been talking to her on the, through the bingo game for 6 months. And this person is talking to 40 or 50 other people about the fact that her fake mother died and is getting money from all of these people. They usually don't do it right away. They groom people. And so those scams start to happen slowly. But you start to give all this money away. And then once they have account numbers, you're kind of done. Bank accounts get wiped out. So now we've talked about all those scams that are outside. I will tell you that that's less than 25% of the scams. Over 75% of the scams are from your family member or friends. They're going to have you sign stuff away. They're going to get you to buy into something. Your friends connect you with someone who maybe is a financial planner who really isn't, and scams your accounts. So a lot of scams are actually more from family and friends than they are from all of those ones that we hear about on the news. So it's just something to think about. If you are someone in your family who, like one person is helping out the senior in the family and they've got the signature on the checking account, right? I'm going to encourage you to have 2 people with a signature on the checking account. And I know that's harder. Or to have monthly look-ats. So maybe I don't have the signature on the checking account, but I can go into mom or dad's checking account at any time and see where the money's being spent. I had someone who, and it's hard. We have a lot of caregivers. We have a lot of adult children and grandchildren who have become caregivers, right? And that brother or that sister who lives nearby is the one who stops over and helps. And maybe they pick up groceries. And one week they're like, oh, I need milk. I'm just going to throw milk on grandpa's tab here. It's just a gallon of milk. And then the next week when you buy groceries, it's the gallon of milk and a loaf of bread and a carton of eggs, which is $20, right? Because eggs are a fortune right now. And then the next week it's, they fill a whole bag of groceries. Because, eventually I'm going to get grandpa's money anyway. And I'm owed this because I do this for them. I didn't ask, right? And I'm not giving them money back, but I'm slowly financially scamming my parent or grandparent because I'm taking something I didn't ask for. I had someone who the grandson bought a TV on the credit card. One who would buy a couple cases of beer every time they went and got groceries. And then when they went to pay for their prescriptions, there was no money left in that account. So it's slowly things happen. I will say too, I had a family member. We trusted someone to be taking care of my grandma who lived in the little small town by her. And we found out after she passed away, a lot of money was siphoned out of the account and did not go to my grandmother's care. But we trusted that person implicitly. So it is something to really take a look at and have people two eyes on things rather than just one set. So the adult children and grandchildren who some moved in over COVID, some of them started out fantastic. That grandparent had a roommate, right? Or that parent now had someone else with them, and just social interaction was so important. But sometimes that person brought their drug or alcohol addictions with them, and we know all of that stuff escalated during COVID. Being isolated and having a drug or alcohol addiction definitely escalated. And maybe someone who had mental health issues. I've had clients who, this person moved in and grandma and grandpa don't want to say, this isn't working out, because it was so nice that they figured out someone could help me. And they do bring me to my doctor's appointments, and they do shovel the driveway. And what would I do if they weren't here, right? So I'll put up with some other stuff. But I've also seen some of my clients who maybe their adult children had mental health issues and they've never moved out of the home. But when that senior was 50, they could handle their child's mental health issues. But now that they're 80, they can no longer handle what's happening. And so that adult child has now become abusive in ways. The physical stuff has escalated. That 80-some-year-old grandparent or parent can now no longer manage that. And so it has become abusive in ways. So we have done some help with that as well. You can't just make someone leave your home, and you can't just get someone mental health help when they're an adult. They have to want it. So we work with a lot of county agencies to do that. One of the things we do is a lot of safety planning with people. A lot of my clients, again, do not want to leave their home, and they do not want the abuser to have to leave. They just want the abuse to stop. So we do some safety planning. What can you do if things escalate? Who is your support system? Who can you talk to? Do you have a neighbor? And I know my mom talks to her neighbors every day, right? I think they meet at the mailbox in their little community at a certain time every day. She's got friends around the state that she calls every day. So if you aren't hearing from your friend like you used to, kind of that checking in, right? You might be part of somebody's safety plan. If I haven't called you by noon, will you call me and make sure things are okay? Or if I call you and we're talking and I say a certain word, you know I'm in trouble. But this also means that you had to have opened the door or started that conversation with your friend. Some people are not ready to take help yet, but if you open the door and talk about services like Alexandra House, or that you would come and get them, or that you would let them stay with you for a couple days, right? If you open that door with your concerns, you've opened the door, and then you have to wait for them to walk through it. You can't force them to walk through it, and that's the hard part. But with kind of talking about this safety planning, maybe it's, should we change the locks? Now that your, granddaughter has moved out and she can't steal your things anymore and pawn them, right? Maybe we can change the locks. I had one person who it was sad, but she's like, I realized I have to change my phone number. I just need a new phone. I've blocked, I've done everything, but I think I just need a new phone number, and the important people I know will have that phone number now. I had one person who said she would turn her lights off and on, the lights in front of her door, and if they didn't get turned off at night, her neighbor knew to come over. Right? They know the color of car of their abuser who shouldn't be in the driveway anymore, and they've shared that with their neighbors. If you see that car in my driveway, please call the police for me. I had one person who said, and this was actually when I was working in the high schools, a young man told me, yeah, we call my aunt. Someone calls her every night to get a recipe or talk about a recipe. And if my aunt can't give us or find that recipe, someone comes to visit. That's the safety planning that their family has done to protect their aunt and people in the house. So it's kind of the same thing. Maybe you talk about, when's the last time you baked oatmeal cookies? And if they can't tell you when they baked oatmeal cookies, that might be the conversation about, I need to come over and get them help. Are you going to bake oatmeal cookies right now? Yes. Okay, that means maybe I need to call the police right now. Abusers are really good about making it sound, they could be standing right next to that person with a knife, with a threat to push them down the stairs, because they might know about those nightly calls. And if you say the wrong thing, they're ready. And I know some of this sounds really intense, but we have people living in fear every day in some of these situations. We hope that it's not anybody that we know. And my hope is that none of you have had to deal with this, but we know statistics are out there that it's 1 in 10. Some of you may have dealt with this and been able to move forward on it. And that is my goal, is to help people to move past it without guilt, without shame. I think it's scary to talk about, but on the back of that orange brochure, it says MARC, M-A-A-R-C. It's the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center. And we are really lucky here in Minnesota. You call one number. You can tell them what you feel, what you think, what you're worried about. You're not supposed to be the investigator. How many of you have heard of child protection reports? We hear about those all the time, right? But we don't think about elder abuse or vulnerable adult abuse. And this covers vulnerable adult too. Somebody's PCA is coming in and not taking care of them the appropriate way, right? Or family members are the PCA and they are not doing anything that they're supposed to be doing, right? So we need to get that help. I will tell you, anybody can call Mark. It does not have to be just a police officer or myself. I will tell you there are times when people have called me and they start telling me, maybe it's a sister telling me about what the other sister is doing to the parent. I can't make that report because I haven't seen it. But that sister can make that report, right, about what's going on in that home. But I have made reports. I will tell you, the woman I talked about earlier who we helped with legal and whose abusive husband got incarcerated after an abuse, her financial situation was so bad that I asked her if we could make a MARC report so that she could get the help that she needed from an entity that could do much more than I could. That MARC report would then go to either a local police department or the Anoka County Adult Protection Services. But again, it's a confidential report. If you are a family member or a friend, they don't say who told. But it is a way to get sometimes things started so that a person can be safe. It's hard for us, and especially with COVID when people weren't being allowed in the house, or family members who won't allow other family members to come in. So again, the MARC number is the 6th one on that brochure. So I'm going to share again about, I had a client, a male this time. He was in his early 60s. He came to us because his family locked him out of his home. They brought him up here from another state after he'd had a stroke and said they were going to care for him and help him. It got to be too much for the family. They became neglectful and abusive. And someone who was working with him said he's outside and there's nowhere to go. We had this gentleman in our shelter, actually in the hotel, during COVID for almost 4 months. He had the most positive disposition, and when you talk to him, you would never know what his situation was. But we would share a lot, and again, we couldn't visit, it was COVID, so I was on the phone with him quite a bit in supporting him, and we had advocates at the shelter working with him to get him connected to county services. When he would get evaluated by county services, and they would say are you able to walk? Do you have the ability to walk? Yep. But he wouldn't tell him that half the time his feet were so swollen he couldn't put his shoes on, and so many times he didn't walk. But yes, he could walk when he could. So he answered yes with a smile. He didn't share about many things that were happening because he only saw the positive in life. So the first time we got him evaluated, they said he has no needs. There is no financial support. There is no PCA support. There is no medical support. He has no needs. So we had to have a conversation with him about being very open, because it was hard. Nobody wants other people to know that I need help and that there's some things I can't do anymore or some things that happened to me. So when we had him, we had to work with the county and the county system to get him reevaluated. And then they found that he did qualify for many resources and supports. We were able to get him into an assisted living type apartment situation where when he needed help, he could get it. But when he was fine, he didn't need any of the support. I will tell you that this gentleman has gone back to teaching. He was a college professor before his stroke. I talked to him the other day, and because he got help along the way from many different places, he is thriving. He's absolutely thriving. And his family had written him off and had abused him. And so I think we as a society, we don't value anybody who is older. He has a lot of life left to live, and he is absolutely thriving. But if he would not have gotten that help through all of those different systems and that first person who made that call to get him connected, we're not sure where he would be today. But he just needed some help. He just needed to have people helping him take some steps for forward movement in his life. And that's a big part of us, is linking people to resources. I don't have all the answers. And I ask a lot of people because, like I said, I was doing teens for 15 years, and the resources for seniors, I will say, are just as tough to find as the resources for teens. You think you just would call and there would be someone who would help someone get a wheelchair or a walker or it's not that way. You would think that this person should be able to quickly get, some food support. If we move an abuser out, can't we get them quickly connected to a Medilink taxi? It can take a lot. And if you don't have a computer, if you don't have the ability to get connected to all those things, it doesn't work. So we do a lot of linking to resources. I fill out a lot of papers by hand with clients so that I can enter them for them and do things for them as well. We get people connected to a lot of different places. So if you are, again, someone who's concerned about someone, or maybe you know someone who the abuser has left or moved out, whether it's because of legal reasons, they've gotten an order, right? Or they've just finally got that abuser to leave the home. Think about how you can help. Can I drive you to the grocery store? Can I pick something up for you? When's your next medical appointment? Can I shovel your driveway? Can I help you? If I can't physically do it, can I help you find someone who can? I know as a church community, oftentimes I've seen churches that say we have groups that will go out and, we'll find volunteers to shovel driveways or rake lawns or mow the grass. I had one person who couldn't get to her mailbox anymore. Come to find out, if you call the post office and you put a mailbox next to your door, you live in a residential house, they will put the mail in the mailbox next to your door. They will get out of their truck, but you have to request that if you are an elderly person who can't walk all the way down your driveway or someone who has a disability. But unless you know that, you don't get your mail, right? And for many people, that's their way of communication. That's where they're connected. So it's just, thinking of those resources. I connect a lot of people with food shelves. And they say, well, I called and I don't have a car. I don't drive anymore. I can't get a food shelf. Most food shelves don't tell you that they will deliver to those people who are unable to come and pick up. But if you don't ask, you don't know, right? And so connecting people with that food shelf. Alexandra House has a food shelf. And we actually, during COVID, the food shelves weren't delivering. Many of the food shelves were shut down. We saw that as such a need that we started delivering food shelves because our clients did not have food. We got some to figure out how to order food, right? But a lot of people don't have computers or don't have the technology or the ability to do it. So we had to start delivering food shelves during COVID and working with other places to get enough food to deliver food shelves. And so really people had to pivot. A lot of links to resources like the county programs and waivers, and the abuser might have been helping pay a little rent, or maybe I had to divorce my partner and now that they're not paying half the rent with their Social Security, right? Or they're not paying the mortgage payment, or I can't afford the utilities. So it's how do we get them connected with some assistance so that they can stay in the home if they want to, or to stay in the apartment if they want to, or if they're ready to move to an assisted living or a senior building because they're just done, right? They're done with a 4-bedroom house and the kids are all gone and it's a lot to maintain and I don't want to do those stairs anymore. So I think I am ready to change. So we assist people with that too. We get them connected. Anoka County Community Assistance Program has senior outreach workers that will come over and meet with a senior. Because sometimes it's like, I just can't make my bills anymore. I used to be able to, right? And now I just can't. They will maybe help you with the food stamp. We now call it SNAP, food assistance. So maybe you get $100 a month to help you so that you can use that $100 to pay the utility bills that have gone up, right? And maybe we get you connected with, you are in and you have cable. Well, maybe we can help you get the $30 off your phone bill or your cable bill because you're a senior. But sometimes we don't know about those programs. So how can we help people stay where they want to stay once we get the abuser or abusers out of the home or out of that living environment? Because again, that's a scare tactic. If I leave, what are you going to do? You're going to get moved into a home. So we really try and help link those resources. You here at church are a huge part of community supports. What I'm finding is more of my clients who are connected to their community are able to thrive sooner than others. Those who have a strong faith community that they can reach out to, again, when they're ready, because sometimes they don't tell anybody what's going on and they put on a really good face in front of everybody. They don't want to be vulnerable because it's scary. But I really encourage folks to reach out to their faith community for some help and support. Some of my clients literally, even though they were in our shelter, somebody from their church would come and pick them up to go to church every Sunday. They still wanted that connection. It was so important to them. So those things are so, so important. Getting connected with local food shelves. The libraries have computers. So some of my clients who don't have computer access, I encourage to go to the local library. And oftentimes libraries and some of the county, little county buses will take you and drop you off at a library and then pick you up later. So we're actually going to do some presentations like this at the local libraries here in Anoka County. We have one coming up on Thursday in the Centennial Lakes area. If anybody has interest or wants someone else to hear this presentation, there's a flyer on the table. But we're going to start working with the county libraries because that's where some of our seniors come to use a computer, to fill out forms, to look stuff up because they don't have access at home. Or they're afraid to look it up at home because they think the abuser is going to see where they looked. So working with those folks has been huge. And senior centers, I can't say enough. When the senior centers were closed, our seniors lost a huge connecting point. To play bingo, to do book club, to have their woodworking club. I am amazed at what some of the senior centers offer. The trips, but the ability to socialize with other people. And so I oftentimes, some of my seniors who have been victim survivors for so long and have been so isolated due to the abuse that they incurred and have been so cut off, we really look at what does the senior center in their community offer and how can they get reconnected and have a group of people at a table they can talk to, right? And play cards with or talk about a book or share something. Just have coffee. So we've been doing a lot of outreach to those senior centers, and a lot of my clients, I definitely refer to them. I had one senior that I called to check in on, and he told me, I can't talk now, I got to go down to bingo. He told me at the beginning he would never play bingo. But he's like the organizer now of some of the events at the senior living complex that he's at. So, getting connected to the community is huge. So that's why I say you as folks, reaching out to folks who haven't been showing up, seeing how they're doing, that call. And then it's maybe a couple calls, right? Maybe it's offering to pick them up to bring them so they can join in. But those are huge because that's when that isolation perpetrates that abuse when the abuser knows that no one else is checking in or no one else is coming around. No one's going to see what's happening. So I shared a lot of information right now. Questions, comments, thoughts. I do have the little half-sheet surveys that you were handed out. If you can fill those out, those really help us. And I know that here at Zion, you come from all kinds of different cities and communities. I will tell you that helps us a lot of the survey literally helps us with our grants. It helps them know that we're talking to people, that we're doing some outreach. If you have other ideas of places that need to have this conversation, you can give me your name and number on there if you want, or you can suggest a place that I reach out to. But I'm very open to having conversations with people, whether it's a personal conversation or one where you think that you could help me get connected to other community resources, because elder abuse is just not talked about. It's hidden. It becomes very secretive. And we are all proud. We are all proud people, and we don't want people to know what's happening, but sometimes we truly need that support. We have lots of life left to live. We do not have to be living in abusive situations. There's materials. Some people ask me how I can donate or how I can help. There are some donation materials in those little brochure boxes. I know your church does a lot to support Alexandra House in many, many ways. So it's just there if you want it, because I oftentimes get that question. And then we've got Joyce sitting over here. We have raffle tickets. The Hope Gala is coming up in March. Some of you may have actually attended our Hope Galas in the past. It's really a fun event, and this year it's the Roaring 20s theme. But I also have raffle tickets where you can win a trip. So you had a question.